Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world where the cure for what ails you might just come wrapped in smoke and shadows. Not the kind from a grill, sorry, no barbecue here, but the kind that curls slowly from bundles of dried sage, cedar, or frankincense, coiling in the air like tiny ghostly snakes. You can almost taste the resin on your tongue, a mix of sweet and bitter, as an old healer hums under their breath. It's not quite a song, not quite a prayer, something in between. And yes, you probably won't survive this if you're allergic to mystery. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scene is older than written history, a circle of people, their faces flickering in firelight, leaning forward as the healer steps into the center. They carry a clay bowl lined with glowing embers, over which herbs crackle and release their perfume. The air changes. It's thicker, heavier, like it's paying attention now. In some ancient traditions, smoke wasn't just a pleasant extra, it was the bridge between the visible and the invisible. The Hittites, for example, burned specific resins before speaking to their gods, believing the scent carried words skyward. In Mesoamerica, copal incense was offered to draw spirits closer. And if you've ever smelled copal, you know it doesn't just drift, it demands you notice. And here's a quirky little tidbit. Some healers in the ancient Mediterranean believed certain incense could literally drive demons into jars. Historians still argue whether this was metaphor or a very elaborate pest control system. But the smoke wasn't only for spirits, it was for the sick person too. Imagine lying on a reed mat while tendrils of scented air snake over your skin, the healer tracing patterns in the air with their hands, sometimes muttering in a language you don't recognize. Sometimes the herbs were chosen for their real medicinal properties, thyme, for example, which has antibacterial qualities, and other times they were chosen for their personality, if you can believe that. Yes, plants had personalities, a bitter root for stubborn illnesses, a fragrant flower for sadness that wouldn't lift. And the chanting, that was the glue. Repetition wasn't random, it was rhythm, a heartbeat that matched the fire's crackle and the patient's breath. I picture an Egyptian temple chamber, the air thick with kaifi incense, priests moving in slow circles, singing names of gods and ingredients alike, honey, wine, juniper, myrrh, a recipe and a spell rolled into one. The patient might not understand a word, but maybe they didn't have to. Healing was as much about creating a world where sickness couldn't survive as it was about killing the sickness itself. And sometimes that meant making the air itself feel like a safe place. Imagine now that the smoke begins to thin, the chanting quiets, a hand rests briefly on your forehead, not to check your temperature, but to seal something in, or maybe keep something out. And in that moment, whether or not the illness leaves, you feel shifted. Like the world you walked into was heavier, dimmer, and the one you'll walk out to will be just a little lighter, a little warmer, a little more alive. The embers pop, the healer nods, and somewhere in the shadows, the smell of cedar clings to your skin. That's the first medicine, and we've only just started. The fire might be gone now, but the healer's work continues in a language even older than smoke. Touch. Not the hurried pat of a busy doctor checking a pulse, but slow, deliberate contact, like the way a sculptor's hands linger on clay before shaping it. In ancient Egypt, healers believed certain points on the body connected directly to the soul, and that pressure or warmth in those spots could coax balance back. Imagine lying on cool linen sheets in a dim chamber, the air scented with lotus oil, while trained hands press, hold, and release in an unhurried rhythm. Each movement is a question, and the body, if you listen closely, always answers. I picture another scene, half a world away, in the high mountains of the Andes. A Quechua Paco, a healer, moves their hands just above the patient's skin, never quite touching, but sensing the heat, the pull, the strange static of imbalance. They might pull at the air like they're teasing invisible threads, gather something unseen into their palm, and then blow it away into the wind. Quirky detail? In some traditions, if the healer yawns during this process, it's considered a sign the sickness has left the patient and entered the healer's own body, something they'll later purge with herbs, song, or cold water. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic empathy or a belief in literal transfer. And here's a little shocker. In some ancient cultures, like among the Greeks, the healer's own dreams were used to diagnose you. Yes, their dreams, not yours. If they slept after a healing session and dreamed of snakes, water, or birds, each had a coded meaning for your recovery. Imagine booking an appointment today and being told, "Come back tomorrow. I need to nap before I tell you what's wrong." But back to touch. In many traditions, the healer wasn't fixing you. They were reminding your body how to fix itself. They'd warm stones in a fire and lay them along your spine, not just for muscle relaxation, but because they believed heat awakened certain energy lines. Roads that sickness had blocked, like fallen trees across a forest path. Some would use feathers instead of fingers, brushing lightly over skin to sweep away spiritual residue. Picture the tickle of an eagle feather across your forearm, the whisper of air it moves with each pass. And it wasn't always silent. Sometimes, while their hands worked, the healer would hum, a vibration you'd feel in your bones. Science now knows vibration can affect muscle tone and even heart rate, but back then, it was simply the language of care. A touch paired with sound, a signal to the body, it's time to return. Now here's a fringe tidbit for you. In ancient Japan, some Yamabushi mountain monks claimed they could heal with a single press of the hand, but only if they had fasted and remained silent for 7 days beforehand. They believed the stillness purified their energy so completely that one touch could reset another person's life force. Was it truth? Was it theater? Historians still shrug. I imagine now the session ending. The healer draws their hands away slowly, like lifting them from water, careful not to disturb the surface. They might place a small charm or stone in your palm, not as payment, but as an anchor, something to keep your healing from drifting away. You leave not with a prescription, but with the memory of warmth where their hands had been, and a strange feeling that the ache you came in with is no longer entirely yours. If touch was one language of ancient healing, then plants were the library. Not the modern, tidy kind with neat shelves and labeled spines, but a living library, green, fragrant, and buzzing with bees. Every healer I've ever read about, from the steamy riverbanks of the Amazon to the windy plains of Mongolia, seemed to keep their own mental index of leaves, roots, and resins. And this wasn't just botany, it was relationship. In many traditions, before you could harvest a plant, you had to ask permission, sometimes out loud, sometimes with a gift, like a pinch of tobacco scattered at its roots. Take willow bark, for example. Ancient Sumerians chewed it for pain relief long before anyone in a lab synthesized aspirin from its compounds. Or frankincense, burned in temples from Egypt to India, not just for its sweet smoke, but for its antimicrobial properties, which modern science confirmed thousands of years later. Here's the twist. The healers using these plants didn't talk about active ingredients or dosages. They spoke about the plant's mood, its spirit, its willingness to help on a given day. Historians still argue whether this was poetic language for trial and error knowledge, or whether they genuinely believed the plants had personalities. One fringe story that still makes me smile. In some Pacific Island traditions, if a plant refused to grow near a healer's home, it was taken as a sign the healer should not use it. Imagine applying that to modern pharmacy. If your aspirin bottle kept falling off the shelf, maybe the universe was saying, try ginger tea instead. The preparation of these remedies could be as ceremonial as the healing itself. A Celtic healer might stir a concoction sunwise to invite light into the body, while an Amazonian curandero might whistle into a brew, embedding the melody of protection. And let's not forget the more unexpected treatments. In ancient China, powdered pearls were prescribed for calming the heart and clearing the mind. Yes, pearls, the kind you'd find in jewelry, crushed, dissolved, and sipped like tea. It wasn't always about ingestion either. Some plants were used for smudging, burning to create a cleansing smoke. Sage in native North America, Palo Santo in South America, juniper in Central Asia. The healer would fan the smoke over a person with a feather, coaxing it to cling to their skin, their hair, their clothes. The idea? Smoke could reach the places hands couldn't. Spiritual corners, emotional cobwebs, and sometimes the plants were simply companions. In the deserts of the American Southwest, Navajo healers might sit in silence beside a blooming cactus, believing that being in its presence could teach endurance. No picking, no burning, just sitting. In the rainforest, there were healers who swore by the power of the ayahuasca vine, not only to heal illness, but to guide dreams, connecting the dreamer to ancestral voices. And here's where it gets weird. In the Amazon, there's a persistent belief that certain plants can choose who they heal. If they don't like you, the medicine simply won't work. Science hasn't caught up with that one yet. I think about this when I see the tidy rows of herbal teas at a grocery store, all labeled, all interchangeable. In the old days, you wouldn't just grab a packet. You'd have to know the plant's story, its temperament, its favorite growing spot. You might even have to earn its trust. Picture a healer preparing a remedy at night, moonlight catching on the rim of a clay bowl, steam rising like whispered prayers. They stir slowly, taste the edge of the brew, then nod as if to someone unseen. The patient drinks, not just swallowing a liquid, but the memory of the forest, the weight of the healer's intention, and perhaps a little bit of magic. And maybe that's the point. Ancient plant medicine wasn't just about chemistry. It was about connection to the earth, to the seasons, to something bigger than both healer and patient. And that connection, once formed, could be just as healing as the remedy itself. But not every ancient cure came from leaves or roots. Some floated in the air as sound, slipping into the body without a single touch. Music, chants, the steady beat of a drum. They weren't entertainment, they were medicine. Across cultures, the rhythm was a bridge, a heartbeat that connected this world to the unseen. I sometimes wonder if our ancestors knew something we forgot, that the body doesn't just listen to sound, it changes because of it. In ancient Greece, there were entire healing temples where patients would lie in darkened chambers, letting music wash over them. The philosopher Pythagoras, yes, the triangle guy, believed specific harmonies could restore balance to the soul the same way a tuner adjusts a string. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, shamans in Siberia pounded their drums in trance-inducing patterns, believing the rhythm could carry them into other realms to retrieve lost pieces of a patient's spirit. Historians still argue whether these beats were purely psychological tools or if something other was happening. And then there's the quirky bit. In medieval Europe, some healers prescribed laughter cures, not metaphorically, literally instructing patients to watch comedic plays or tell absurd stories until they laughed so hard they cried. They believed laughter shook loose, stagnant energy, the same way wind shakes leaves from a tree. Science today would call that an endorphin release. Our ancestors called it chasing away demons. In the Americas, sound healing often came wrapped in ceremony. The Navajo chantways, for example, could last for days. Poetry, music, and ritual woven together to recalibrate the spirit. In the Amazon, the Icaros, those spirit-given songs, weren't just for guiding visions. They were sonic maps, each note a coordinate to healing. I once read a participant describe how, mid-ceremony, the melody felt like it was untangling something inside their chest, like invisible hands loosening a knot they didn't know was there. Silence, too, had its place. In certain Buddhist traditions, healers would sit in complete stillness with the sick, not offering words or touch, only presence. The idea was that the patient's body could remember its own natural rhythm when given space to listen for it. Imagine a doctor's appointment today where instead of tests and prescriptions, your physician just sits with you for an hour, breathing slowly. And then there were the in-between sounds, rattles filled with seeds or pebbles, bells tuned to specific tones, conch shells whose deep, oceanic notes seemed to travel right into the bones. In Polynesia, blowing into a conch before a healing was a way to call in protective spirits. In ancient Tibet, singing bowls were struck or rubbed to create vibrations said to clear stagnant energy from the body. And here's where it gets really fringe. Some healers claim these sounds could repair the body at a cellular level. Modern studies on vibrational therapy are starting to test this, but back then it was just taken as truth. Picture it, a patient lying in a dim, fire-lit hut, eyes closed. A healer stands over them, shaking a rattle in a slow, steady rhythm. The sound isn't loud, it's intimate, like a heartbeat right beside your ear. The patient breathes in time with the rhythm, their body loosening, mind drifting. Outside, the night is still. Inside, something invisible is shifting. Even today, I think we've all felt a glimpse of this. The song that makes your throat tighten. The hum of a fridge at night that somehow feels comforting. The lullaby you don't remember learning the words to, but can still sing in your sleep. Ancient healers didn't just use sound to heal. They understood that sound was already inside us. Every inhale, every exhale, every pulse, every thought, it all makes a kind of music. Maybe all they were doing was reminding people how to listen. There's one more layer to this old medicine chest I want to open before we drift into the quiet. It's the layer you can't touch, can't bottle, can't even see. It's the way ancient healers worked not just with herbs, stones, or songs, but with the invisible threads between people. Because in their view, illness didn't just happen inside you. It happened in the space between you and the world. In some African traditions, a sickness might be traced to a broken relationship, a feud with a neighbor, a betrayal in the family, a forgotten promise to the ancestors. Healing wasn't complete until those threads were rewoven. That could mean public apologies, shared meals, or days of storytelling until the hurt loosened its grip. One healer from the Shona people of Zimbabwe was recorded saying, "The body will not stay well if the village stays unwell." Historians still debate whether these communal rituals worked because of psychology or because they tapped into something beyond it. In ancient Japan, Shinto priests sometimes performed oharai, great purification ceremonies, to sweep away not just personal misfortune, but the pollution clinging to an entire community. They'd walk the boundaries of the village, chanting and ringing bells, as if redrawing the line between order and chaos. The quirky bit? Some ceremonies even involved transferring the bad energy into a straw doll, which was then sent floating down a river, never to return, like ghost mail, forwarded to nowhere. And in the Andes, healers might perform despachos, offerings to Pachamama, where flowers, coca leaves, and sugar figurines were arranged in intricate patterns before being buried or burned. These weren't random gifts. Each element was chosen to rebalance the unseen agreements between humans, nature, and spirit. If someone was ill, a despacho wasn't just for them, it was for the whole web they were part of. Then there's the odd but beautiful practice of name healing. Among some indigenous groups in North America, a person who had suffered great loss might be given a new name, symbolically shedding the weight of the old one. It was like hitting a spiritual reset button, a reminder that who you are now doesn't have to be bound to what happened before. Modern therapists sometimes stumble into similar ideas: group therapy, family mediation, even the act of writing an unsent letter. But in the ancient world, this wasn't therapy, this was survival. Because if you lived in a small community, you couldn't just block someone. Harmony was medicine. I've read about one healer in Mongolia who refused to treat a sick child until the parents resolved an argument with their in-laws. The spirit world will not let the child be well, he told them, until the house is quiet again. And sure enough, after the families made peace, the child recovered. Coincidence? Skeptics would say yes. Believers would just smile. Of course, not every invisible wound could be healed in public. Some work was done in deep privacy. In the deserts of the American Southwest, a Navajo Hatali might spend nights in prayer, weaving intricate sand paintings that told the story of the patient's illness and its cure. By morning, the painting would be destroyed, its beauty offered to the wind. Healing wasn't about clinging to the image. It was about letting it go. And maybe that's the real heart of it. Ancient healing, at its deepest level, was about restoring flow inside the body, inside the mind, inside the spaces between people. Whether through herbs, music, ceremonies, or whispered forgiveness, it was always about movement. I think about that sometimes when life feels stuck. How maybe what we need isn't always a pill or a plan. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's a song. Sometimes it's just sitting beside someone and letting the silence breathe for both of you. Because if there's one thing all these ancient healers seem to agree on, it's this: nothing in life is truly separate. Not the body from the mind, not the self from the world, and definitely not you from me. The night feels softer now, as if the air itself has learned to breathe slower. All those ancient stories we've wandered through, the whispered spells over river water, the gentle hands placing herbs on wounds, the chants that echoed in caves, they can rest now. Like embers beneath ash, their warmth is still here, even if the flames have gone quiet. Feel your own breath, the way a healer might have noticed it centuries ago, in and out. No rush. The body knows the rhythm. The heart keeps time, steady and sure, like a drum you don't need to hear to feel. If your mind drifts back to the temples, the forest clearings, the sunlit courtyards of long ago, let it. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. Healing isn't always about chasing visions. Sometimes it's about letting the quiet arrive and allowing it to stay. You are safe here. You are whole here. The stories you've carried tonight have already done their work. They've softened the edges, reminded you of how many ways there are to be cared for, how many times the world has found a way to hold you, even before you were born. So loosen your shoulders, let your jaw rest. Feel the weight of your body sink into the surface beneath you, as if the earth herself were cradling you in her vast, ancient hands. The stars above blink slower. The ground below hums steady. You are exactly where you need to be. There is nothing to seek now, no ritual to complete, no words to repeat. Only the hush, only the breath. Let go, dreamer. Sleep deeply. The healers of the past will keep watch.